Welcome to Eternity Archives, a podcast by Eternity College for students, alumni, faculty, and friends. I'm Ernesto Duke, Eternity's president and the host of this podcast. At Eternity, we have students, alumni, and faculty living all around the world, living for the kingdom of Jesus. One of the most beautiful things about Eternity is how our diverse community, representing different countries, cultures, and backgrounds, comes together to study and be transformed by the scriptures. In this podcast, we hope to share the amazing story of Jesus' people in God's kingdom around the world at Eternity College. This is Eternity Archives. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening and coming back to Eternity Archives. My name is Ernesto Duke, president here at Eternity College, and I am with Lauren, who's one of our current students. So, Lauren, thank you so much for being on Eternity Archives. I'd love to hear a little bit about yourself, where you're living, ministry, whatever it is that you would like to share with us.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Lauren. I'm married to my husband, Bryce. We just got married back in January. That's been a huge blessing. I am from Minnesota and currently temporarily live in Iowa for my husband to be able to finish his master's degree. But we'll be moving back to Minnesota where I'm hoping to start, Lord willing, hoping to start serving in ministry in January. Primarily, I'll be working with a ministry that works with refugees and helps to welcome them and, perhaps find a place to live, find a job, practice English, all sorts of different services. And so I'm excited to be a part of that team. I am a licensed ESL teacher, so a big part of my role will be teaching the English classes.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand that global missions is not just something that you have to like get on a plane and go somewhere to. I mean, I'm sure maybe you'll fly to Minnesota, but still, yeah, it's still within the country. Can you talk a little bit about just the diaspora style ministry that you're going to be involved in and what it means to serve the nations here in the U.S. and how that's going to look? Or I mean, you don't know, but how you hope that would look for y'all.
Yeah, I think this is something that I didn't understand for quite a while. Back in high school, I actually felt like God was calling me to serve overseas and was planning on joining a team in Asia. But then when COVID-19 pandemic happened, I wasn't able to go overseas. And so I was actually really blessed to start serving with this ministry as a volunteer in my hometown. And it opened up my eyes to see that there are unreached people right here in the US, even maybe in your own hometown. And it's a huge blessing to be able to serve in my hometown and yet still be able to serve those who don't have any gospel presence in their community. In their cultural community. Now being here in the US, they have an opportunity to hear the gospel, but it is, I think, especially because some of the people who are here who haven't had the opportunity to hear the gospel are Muslims. I think it can be really intimidating for Christians to know how to get involved. And so I'm really excited. Part of the position that I will be filling will also be helping to bring in other churches and Christians who want to be involved in reaching out to the unreached that live right next door to us. So I'm really excited for that part of the role as well.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about, or maybe give some advice to people who would want to engage with their Muslim neighbors, their friends, people they see at the park, people that go to their kids' school? Like, what is a proper contextualized approach to maybe not necessarily sharing the gospel, but what's a good way to build relationships with our Muslim neighbors and friends?
Yeah, I'm still learning a lot, but I think the first thing to do is always to smile and say hi, because a lot of, um, especially Muslim refugees know that other people's perception of them isn't always great. And so if you can just start out by showing them that um, that you want to think the best of them and not immediately um, yeah, they won't be as guarded then because of you just approaching them in a friendly way.
Yeah.
I think also it helps because Muslims often have some separation of men and women. It can be helpful to approach someone who's more similar to yourself. So for me,
Hmm.
I usually will approach women
Hmm.
um, rather than men. And for men, it would be helpful for you to approach men instead of women. Um, yeah, I think I've also heard, and I'm still learning, I think I've also heard that like Muslim women aren't really um like I hug my Muslim lady friends all the time, but I don't
Hmm.
think I think especially hugging would not be comfortable for them, but I think even shaking hands sometimes I would say at least don't walk up expecting to like
Touch.
firm
Yeah.
handshake,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just approach them more neutrally, and that I think can help as well.
Hmm. So what led y'all to or like what led you and your husband, your family in this direction, specifically with diaspora and did you choose Minnesota because of the Muslim background, or is that just happenstance and now you're learning, or yeah, what kind of led you guys in that direction?
Yeah, I'm originally from Minnesota, and
Right, right.
so we will be returning to my own hometown. And I
Mm,
think that um, really it was like God, I think, led me in this direction rather than me choosing it because
mm,
I was planning on going to Asia. I wasn't necessarily thinking about working with um, people who are primarily Muslim. But when COVID hit and I wasn't able to go overseas and I stayed in Minnesota, I found an organization to volunteer with because I was really passionate about using the gifts that God's given me to serve.
mm.
And it was through that I started teaching just three ladies English every week. And I would say at the beginning of that experience, I really had never spoken to someone who was Muslim.
Mm.
And so it was actually through that experience that I learned about, yeah, our neighbors who are Muslims who,
Mm.
um, yeah, God created them in his image. And I see that just being around them every week and developing a friendship with them. So it
Yeah.
was really that like once a week, 1 hour that I spent just getting to know a few ladies
Mm.
helped me to understand, um, yeah, God's love for them and his desire for them to know him as well.
Mm. Were you an ESL teacher before you decided to pursue this ministry path?
Um, I would say in high school, I was thinking that God wanted to use my life in a certain way, perhaps overseas. And so I entered college with that in mind and
Mm.
studied elementary and ESL education. And so then I was planning on heading out, flying off to Asia just a few months after my graduation from college.
Mm.
So I didn't anticipate ever teaching here in the US.
Yeah.
But I did because of the situation. I ended up staying here and I taught in my hometown at a middle
Ah,
school for 2 years. Um, the first year and a half, I was in some long-term sub positions. Um, and not teaching in my license area.
mm.
But then the last half year, I got to teach in a newcomer classroom, which is for students who have all entered the country within the last year.
Wow.
And so they're all, at least the ones that were in the newcomer class, they're all learning English and learning the school culture. So that was a huge blessing. I loved doing that. And I
Yeah.
actually ended up connecting with some students in that classroom that are connected to the ministry that I'm now hoping to
Mm.
serve with. So I still get to see them sometimes.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
for some people probably don't understand this or know this, but you don't necessarily speak the heart language of your students, right? And so you're
right.
teaching English to people who could literally have three or four words in English, maybe, or what they've seen on TV and stuff. What are some of the challenges? Uh, yeah, how do you do that? I've only learned languages from people that speak the same language I speak. So, well, yeah, how do you feel like it's different? And how do you even approach that? This is probably ESL 101, and anybody who knows what this is thinks I'm an idiot, but I don't know anything about it.
No, 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 that's okay. It's a good question. I think that those who are in the world are like, oh yeah, I have some ideas for how you could do that, but most people don't. That's what they ask me is like, oh, do you speak that language? And yeah, no, I only speak English fluently, and I really wish that I could learn another language fluently. I have studied a few other languages, but I don't
Hmm,
consider myself fluent in any of them.
sure.
Um, so when you teach a language, there's several different methods that you can use to teach. And those methods can be used with um, different languages. Like I can use the same method to teach Spanish. I couldn't actually because I don't speak Spanish fluently, but
Sure.
someone
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Some of the methods that I have used and really enjoyed using when I don't speak the other language and they have only a few words in English. I also forget the name of them because I studied them a while ago, but there's my favorite method is probably using props.
Hmm,
And you start out with maybe a set of six dolls, and there's two dolls that are like maybe a little older, maybe they have gray hair, and
hmm,
there's two dolls that are probably like middle-aged, and then there's two dolls that are like children,
hmm.
and there's a man or a female and a male in each pair.
In each category, yeah.
Yeah, so you start out saying, you hold up a doll and say, the man, the woman, and you teach them just
Mm.
those vocabulary words, just really basic. You start at the
Huh.
man, woman, the boy, the girl, and then you start out by showing the maybe the man, you show him sitting, and so then you can say, the man sits, and then you
Mm.
show the woman sitting, and you say, the woman sits.
Mm.
And so then you start getting a little bit into verbs. You
Right.
start with just like, just present tense. And then you can build up from there using a lot of different props.
Mm.
My one of my students' favorite lessons was when we were working on teaching food vocabulary,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
we moved from food into money. And so
Uh,
we had like a little practice market where they
huh.
would practice like buying different food items. And so we
Huh.
had, all of our food props, and then they had pretend money, Monopoly money, and
Yeah.
can I buy the apple? Can I buy the banana? Can
Huh.
I buy the spaghetti? So you really have to build up a lot, but you can do
Yeah.
it.
And I'm sure it's faster. Well, I'm assuming it's faster with kids, but like realistically, how long does it take a kid who lands in your, kindergarten, first grade ESL class to get to like a conversational point? Like, is that by the time they're done with elementary school? Is it a couple years, like way quicker than that? What would you say is, or what are the goals of like an ESL program for kids, I
Yeah.
guess, in particular?
Yeah, the younger that a child is, the more that they'll be able to learn the language like it's their native language, right? Just by
Hmm.
observing. Um, but the older you get, also the more control you have over your own learning. So you can,
Hmm.
like a middle schooler might be able to think, oh, I want to learn what the words for like cat and dog are. And so
Right.
I'm gonna look up what that word is in the
Yeah.
language.
Right. 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 Right.
But younger children do have the advantage of just like absorbing it naturally.
Mm.
I think that the research shows that for conversational English, it takes between 1 and 2 years for students to be able
Oh,
to develop
that's
that
it.
language. Yep.
That's
Yeah.
so fast. That is
Yeah, it
crazy.
is. But that can be sometimes deceiving because just because they can speak conversationally, when you get into the specific vocabularies of different subjects in school, like if you
Yeah.
think about math, we don't use the words like, well, sometimes we do, but not very often do we use the words adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying.
Hmm.
Outside of math, we don't really use those words, so they would need to learn those words.
Yeah. Math
Each
vocabulary.
subject has
Yeah.
their own vocabulary.
Yeah.
So that can take anywhere like up to like 6 or more years usually to develop
Yeah.
all of that vocabulary.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I speak Spanish fairly well, and there's still categories that I will run into, like especially if I was not that long ago, I was in the hospital with somebody and interpreting for them, and I realized, oh, I don't know any of these words,
Right.
but
Yeah.
and sometimes I don't even know them in English. So it's just
Right.
you're using English context clues and like roots and prefixes and putting them together in your head to kind of figure out what they mean in English, and then to try and explain that into another language is very, very difficult. So that makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Wow, really cool. I would love to hear a little bit about how you came to attorney. I'm assuming it was something to do with your sending agency and how you got here, but what has that experience been like? How, well, yeah, we maybe there's not a good answer for this, but how did you feel that your agency said that you needed to get some education? Because it's one of very few agencies in the country that does that. So
Hmm.
how did that make you feel? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. Um, let's see. So I'm gonna go back a little bit and share a little bit more of my story. Um, when I was planning on moving overseas to Asia, I was with a different missions organization. And like you're saying, they didn't require any more biblical training than I had received.
Hmm.
I do have like a minor in Bible from my undergraduate
Okay, cool.
university, but um, yeah, the so I'm partnering with a missions organization and a local ministry. So that makes what I'm talking about a little more confusing, but they're partnering together, and it's the missions organization that's requiring me to do some additional training. And yeah, I was surprised by it at first, but also impressed because um, the organization has like these 8 different Bible competencies,
Mm,
and in each of them, I need to be at a certain level in order for them to send me.
mm,
Um, and I think that it's a really I think I would say it's thorough um, to prepare people in this way. I think that missionaries who have gone before us um, have been used by God with whatever level of knowledge and training they
yeah,
have.
sure.
Um, but I also think that it is a good idea to receive more training, and
Hmm.
I think that it will help me to, it is helping me to understand my Bible better in
Mm,
order, especially to be able to share with Muslims, because I know that they already have an idea of who Jesus is. And
hmm.
it's very different from our idea of who Jesus is. And so I really want to yeah, know the Bible and know it so well that I can explain how it's different, especially from the Quran.
Mm,
Um, I think that at first when I joined the Bible college, I was concerned that an online institution wouldn't be able to um, I wouldn't be as invested, or I wouldn't be as focused on the work. But I found that the professors at Eternity Bible College are um, just care a lot more than even my undergraduate university
mm,
did. And they are very knowledgeable in what they're talking about, and also have time to talk to me about
mm,
the things that they're teaching. And so I find that I can get a lot more advice and a lot more resources because
mm,
of like the vast, like the variety of professors and how much time they have for their students.
mm.
So I really appreciate that. And I can't remember exactly what your question was, but
No, that's okay.
I answered some of it.
Yes, you did. You totally did. Yeah,
Yeah.
we won't name them and it's fine. But it is kind of it's always been shocking to me, um, how many missionaries go overseas underprepared, and don't, may not even know the Bible, and they're like supposed to church plant in an unreached people group or something like that. And I completely agree with you that God has used people who don't know the Bible in the past, and he's used them in very mighty ways to do amazing things, which is cool. But it it's a matter of like stewardship, and stewardship is not just money, it's time and it's opportunity, and if you have, I just, yeah, there are circumstances. I mean, the underground church in China or something like that, like you can't expect those church planners in that church to like go through some sort of formal education. It's probably not going to happen. Jesus is just working through that church and expanding it across the entire country and into the world, really, which is beautiful, wonderful, and amazing. But um, we don't have, like, we have the opportunity in the States, and a lot of places in the world, we have the opportunity to learn. And it really impresses me when folks like yourself, choose the hard route, knowing that, I mean, you were part of another agency. There would be a way for you to avoid this. Just go to a different agency and literally get to go do the same exact thing. But to be able to look at the task at hand and realize, no, I need to be prepared for this. I need to be able to do these things, and I'm going to get training for that. It's very encouraging to us as a staff and faculty, and I think it's setting an example for future generations of missionaries and workers as well, that it's just, we have to take advantage of what it is that God's given us, and steward those opportunities well. And I do believe that those things are going to pay off. I do think that it was significant that the disciples spent so much time with Jesus, and that Paul, when he meets Jesus on the road to Damascus, he leaves for 3 years to re-examine all the scriptures before he starts his missionary journeys. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking this time, and it's even an admirable thing. And yeah, just very impressed, and very, very encouraged by y'all. Thank you so much for your time, Lauren. Thank you for everybody who listened or watched this episode of Eternity Archives, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of Eternity Archives. If you haven't already, check out Eternity College with 30 plus programs, including advanced bachelor's degrees, dual degrees, associates, and certificates. We're ready to prepare you for whatever it is that God calls you to, and wherever it is that he calls you right now. Check out eternity.edu for more information.